Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is your host Moses Miller Mayat and this is Amateur Thinking. What we have for you here today is man and machine, and what we are saying is we're making a statement to say why man needs a machine as a matter of a right for him to survive for a possible 120 years. Now to do this, I've put a small mathematical model here. It's not complicated. For those of us who are not conversant with mathematics, don't worry, it's very simplified. It's very simple mathematics. So basically what we are saying here to make this case is, in order for man to survive, to live, he needs to obviously feed, because that's our fuel, humans, to feed. And in order for us to get that food, we have to somehow plant it or grow it. Now, if I may go right down to some basic units, if say a man has, one man in a family has got a piece of land 10 meters by 20 meters, and he's got to plant some carbohydrate on it, say maize, and on that piece of land, he can possibly plant 100 plants of maize. It takes approximately 90 days for that plant that he has grown to grow to maturity. So if we assume that man eats approximately 3 kilograms of that carbohydrate daily. If we multiply that by the 90 days, that is the amount of time it takes for the food to mature in terms of it being in the farm. You will get 180 kilograms. Now, as I've said, on this piece of land, he's got 100 plants, and each plant, let's assume each plant produces 5 cobs of maize, or 5 ears of maize, as they say. And each of those ear, or each of those cobs, weighs 0.15 kilograms. So if you multiply 5 by 0.15 by 100, you'll get 75 kilograms. 75 kilograms. Now, if you obviously compare now the 75 kilograms to the 180 kilograms, which he eats within the 90 days that he is supposed to, until he gets the next amount of food to come in, it's not balancing. It's not balancing. So the best thing to do there is we'll say, okay, well, let us increase the size of a piece of land, so that he gets double the amount at least. So in other words, the size of the piece of land will be 20 by 20. And even if he does 20 by 20, meaning you multiply this 75 by 2 to get 150 kilograms, he still can't get to the 180, the amount of food that he needs for the 90 days. Now, the other thing I would like you to see here is I have put this piece of land, this 20 by 20, the double this size, on a perspective, and I've used a football pitch or a football field as an example, or rather as a point of reference for us to see into real perspective the size of this piece of land in real life. So we are aware of the dimensions of a football pitch approximately. I mean, they're all different sizes, but a common one is, say, 80 meters by 40 meters. Now, as you can see, this bottom half, this is half the field. Now, if you share the half, if you do the half again, this piece of land twice the size will be that little shaded bit there. That will equal to a 16th. A 16th of a football pitch. Now, I'm telling you, as a matter of fact, it's close to impossible to cultivate using physical means on a 16th of a piece of land. It's impossible. You can't. It's so difficult. And it's because of that difficulty, that's why we are trying to make a case that no, you definitely need a machine in order to help you, at least for you to maximize your production. It's virtually impossible. That piece of land at 16th, it's difficult. That brings us to this point where man, because that job is physically taxing, that's one of the reasons why people under these conditions of survival do not last a long. I mean, they have short lifespans, something like less than 40 years, and that is horrible. In all honesty, so that's one of the ways of seeing that this activity to try and survive based on physical strength is a health hazard in itself. No wonder people die at short life expectancies of about 40 years out of a possible 120 years. They only survive for less than 40 years. Now, I have not included, obviously, other duties that needs to be done in the home. Things like maintaining the home. It's very taxing to maintain a home. Another thing is cooking. So under these circumstances, cooking, either you have to look for firewood and you have to go to the forest to break it down and so on. So again, it's very energy consuming because quickly people would think, oh, it's a family, therefore the wife must be doing other duties. Yes. Again, those duties are so very taxing. They're very heavy. Then, or maybe they may do other things like, a bit of hunting or subsistence, other subsistence like looking after chickens and so on. Again, that takes in a lot of energy. So, all these factors put together brings us to that point where working just to earn, to survive in itself becomes a health hazard. So man is not physically efficient by his own strength to purely survive using his own physical strength. That's why in most cases the production is very, very low. And because of the effects of the little production, it has got an effect on the man's health. And eventually we have these low life expectancies in areas where subsistence farming is of this physical nature. Now, the other thing I would like you to see is a very simple thermodynamic principle. The rules of physical existence. Very basic as well. What goes in must balance with what comes out. If that doesn't balance, there is no machine that can work. The equilibrium has got to be met. That's how machines work. So if you think of a human being as a machine as well, as we have shown you here, the man was taking in 180 through the 90 days, but he was only getting out, to replace this 180, he was only getting out 150 kilograms. As you can see, this is not a balanced equilibrium in terms of thermodynamics. And that is difficult. How do you expect a man to perform if the equilibrium within his system is not working? This is a shame on us humans. This is very clear. Thermodynamically, it's impossible for this man to do anything to survive long enough. And just to make it, to explain it even more, so the next input, say, of 150 kilograms, then the output will reduce again, say to 110. And then again, that the input 110 again, kilograms, then again this will reduce again to 90, and so on and so forth. And as it goes down, down and down, that's how come man ends up living for only less than 40 years under these circumstances. So surely we should know this, because thermodynamically we are trying to expect this man to do something that is impossible. And then obviously people wonder, oh, they think, oh, these people, especially people in third world countries, they think, oh, they are crazy, or they are stupid, or they are not naturally selected, and so on. They get insulted on top of that. And yet the thing is very clear here. They have found themselves in a position that is impossible to survive. Now, the other thing that could be suggested quickly would be, how about the use of animals, things like horses, or things like oxen, other strong animals, why not use these? Now, obviously, speculatively, I would say, there is a reason why we eventually, especially here in the West, why we eventually left the use of horses and cows or oxen. Why we stopped using this, because obviously they must have had their own problems too. And besides that, It could be also that this enabled us to catapult ourselves into the use of machine, into the invasion of a machine, as we know. So definitely there must be reasons why the machines, why the horses and oxen were left in preference for the machine. And the other thing could be, so why don't you increase the numbers? Population increase. Why don't we increase the population? And as you can know, the world, we are quite populated. And because we are only looking into the quantity without looking into the quality of the population, that brings in new problems. So even if this man has come in, remember, if you increase the population, in other words, this couple gets a new person in the family, a child grows up and so on, that new person will be consuming as well the energy. And as time goes, as you know, obviously, the original person in the family unit will be losing his energy because obviously he'll be growing older. So just by increasing population does not solve the problem. It helps because obviously increasing in number is a good thing within a family unit, but then it doesn't solve the problem. It's a bit more than just increasing in number. So obviously, that only leaves us with one thing, with the machine. Now, again, from this little model that I've shown you, I've said man can only produce within 90 days, he can produce 150 kilograms. For example, if you multiply that by 10, which is what animals can produce, say a horse, about 1,500 kilograms. If you multiply the strength of man 10 times, because a horse can do 10 times the work man can do, or probably even more, man can produce 1,500 kilograms worth of food. Now, if you multiply this by, say, 20, you'll get 30 tons. That's what a machine can do. 30 tons. Can you imagine 30 tons? That's what a machine can do. Now this brings us to a point where I hope this is well understood, because this is the whole point about this exercise. This is another example of where we are held hostage by some of our own systems. What I mean by that is how to make a machine. You know, the materials to be used to make the machine durable, and how to maintain that machine, and the spare parts and so on, in order to make the use of a machine feasible to all mankind. That knowledge is deliberately hidden. And it's deliberately hidden by this rule of, or laws of where somebody, the rules of where intellectual property, they say. So it's hidden by that legislation. And yet, again, this is the other important thing that we want to know here. That sort of hiding things and that corporate greed, you know, that led to the development of a machine that involved plundering some of the most poorest countries in the world, Africa and India, for example. That involved stealing things from these countries under so many different rules. And then on top of that, after the machine was developed, you hide. You're not allowed to know how to make that machine. You're deliberately refused to learn how to make that machine. Otherwise, it's seen as you're breaking the law. And then obviously, when things go wrong, in terms of all global problems that we are facing, things like droughts and wars and terrorism and all these things, then these so-called high IQ people, the people with the high IQ, 200 plus or 150, above 150 plus IQ intellectuals, they all act surprised, you know, and they wail, they start blaming everybody. Oh, and they never blame themselves. They just blame everybody else, everything else. It's never them. And yet they are the ones with the high IQ. Yeah? If you really have a high IQ and you have good genes, How come you're running away from the problems? How come you're hiding things? Eh? Eh? Well, if you really have good genes, then probably you're not supposed to be here on earth. Go to heaven, where there is people with good genes, you know. Here, this is the world where those of us are struggling, where we are struggling. This is this is the world for us, those of us with low IQs. You with high IQ, you go somewhere else. Okay? You leave us alone here with low IQ. We are the majority anyway with our low IQs. You with high IQs, you are the one who brings problems to us. The so-called intellectuals, hiding things, and then when things go wrong, there's no food, then you blame the person. And when you're the one hiding the tool, the tool to create the food. So, that brings me to this other point. Because the machine is a primary tool, it should be made available to great extents. It should be made available, free to all man to access, because it's a primary tool. And that will create a situation where man will understand the importance of tools, and that will create a conducive atmosphere for man to live, possibly to the 120 years. And then that will help man to understand the limits of that machine. And in most examples, as we've seen since the dawn of us inventing a machine, we've known this problem of energy, because machines do consume energy. Now, this time, it will not only be a few people who are working around finding the source of newer fuels. It will be all of us, because we all understand the value of the machine, because we cannot live without a machine. As I've demonstrated to you here, it's impossible for you to use our physical means. Through the course of our history, we used animals, and animals helped us to catapult into machines. So now we have to take the use of machine even further. I know we will have that problem of fuel or energy, but then if you increase the number of people available, or the number of people who could possibly be available to finding the solutions to the problem of fuel, I'm sure we will get closer and closer to finding that solution. All man will work to solve the energy problems. Life on earth will be very, very meaningful to all people. What I mean by that is that now we have a world, this world in which we live in today, there is an element of where life is not totally considered valuable. That's why we end up going to war. Because what do you expect if you go to war? Obviously, you're going to kill somebody. You have to consider that that person's life is not valuable enough to be protected for him to stay alive, but rather to be killed. That's the whole essence of war. And so does your opponent. He also thinks your life is not of value. That's why he also got weapons to put you down. So in this, where we will all understand the limits of this world in which we live in. After all, we are all victims of existence. Life will be very meaningful. Life will be of value. And there will be no such carelessness as legality to kill, as us going to war with one another. That will be seen to begin coming to an end. And I think it's very important for me to share that life will be, as I've briefly said, will be meaningful, and you will find yourself in a situation like food, clothing, and to maintain food and clothing. And then the second bit of life will be things like entertainment, culture, and comedy. And then obviously other important things in life will be things like family relations, obviously friends, and other relationship in terms of marriages and so on. And then the other big one is exploration and knowledge and professionalism. And then finally, problem solving with very, very minimal side effects. So thank you very much for listening. This has been your host, Moses Miller Mayat, and this is Amateur Thinking. I would like to once again apologize that I may have made some mistakes, and if I have, please, this is where I will need your help for you to contribute for us to help to put this together. Because at the end of the day, what we are trying to aim at is the end of legality to kill. It should be within our prayers on a daily basis that you will do everything to protect your life, but you will also do everything to protect another's life, to make sure that nobody falls a victim of our legality to kill. Nobody falls a victim for us to go into war where lives are always lost. When we go to war, we know the results. Something that we already know, we don't need to keep repeating, doing it over and over again. It has been made very clear about people of great intellect have made it clear that if you do the same thing all the time and you expect different results, there must be something wrong with you. We have done wars for the last 1,000 years. We know the results of war. It's always death. There's no need for us to go there again. We live in a moment of our lives, in this 21st century, where that should be seen to be meaningful, and that should be seen within our homes, our families, within our parliaments, schools, and in all walks of our lives. Once again, this is your host, Moses Miller Mayat, and this is Amateur Thinking, and I apologize. Thank you very much.